Hello again everyone and welcome to Taylor Aerospace. Today I'll be doing a tutorial of how to get to Gilly. I thought it would be a nice place to go since we went to Duna last time. It's a bit more interesting, I think anyway. So here's my lander that I'm going to use. It's a standard lander. Again, you can pause this footage down if you want in the YouTube video playback, but it's a very simple lander with a Mark 1 command pod, Science Junior underneath that, and then all the science you can fit. And then the standard, I think it's the X208 fuel tank with a Terrier engine underneath. Put a decoupler on and then a fairing, and that's your lander. That's it. That's all you're going to need. Under that, we're going to have the X216 fuel tank, and then a Poodle engine underneath that, which is going to help. Slap another decoupler there, and then under that, we're going to be having the Jumbo 64. Put a 4-way radial mount decouplers on this, and then we're going to be using the smaller fuel tanks, the small size fuel tanks on that. We're going to stack, just pull it down there. You can stack 3 of them on top of each other like so. Make it a bit more aerodynamic with the dome on top, and then we're going to be strutting all those together just to make sure they're nice and safe, and we're going to be putting Reliant engines under there. We will also be adding a fuel line to connect them, as so. That ensures that all of the fuel will travel from the outside tanks to the inner tanks, and then we're using the mainsail engine in the middle. It's a fairly powerful engine. This will be enough. So you'll see now, I'll try and go. I didn't go to daylight for some reason. I'm not sure why, but you'll see why I'm not too bothered in a moment. So I just full throttled up, went for it, started tipping my way over. Aren't I a great pilot? Look at this. And this is a great example of what not to do. There we go. So revert back to the assembly building. I screwed that up. And here's why. Aerodynamics. Stick some delta wings on it. I just could not control it on that flight. It just started tipping over uncontrollably. I'll be straight up with you. It's not a great rocket, this, to be honest. So we'll go to our proper launch pattern now. So full throttle up. Make sure you're using all 5 of things, including the central main tank. There is no point doing the fuel line trick to get the outside tanks to drain to the central tank if you're not draining the central tank. So always make sure that your center tank is draining as well with the central rocket. So this is a fairly standard rocket. It's not the easiest to control. It's fairly simple, but it does have a habit of tipping over if you push it too fast, too early. And you might even see here little bits of me trying to fight back against it tipping over. But you can keep it pretty straight. And again, like with every sort of ascent, the goal is to have it at a roughly 45-degree angle by the time you've hit 10,000 meters high. And then from there, we'll eject the outside tanks. And you can see there with the fuel line, as I've shown in my other videos, it keeps the central one full. And from here, we'll just make sure that our apoapsis is about between 50 seconds and a minute away, and then we'll start slowly tipping over even further. Obviously I've sped this footage up quite dramatically by about 50-60%, so yours won't go as quick as this, but otherwise the video would be an hour and a half long. And I like to include my mistakes as well, as you saw earlier. I think it's quite good just to know that, you know, if you're new to this game and you're finding it difficult, yeah, we all mess up. It's not an easy game, even when you know what you do, and you'll always forget a part here, a part there. So now all I've done is set a maneuver node, as again, on the apoapsis. Seriously, if you need help getting into orbit, maybe going to Gilly is not the best attempt for you. I would suggest maybe watching some of my older videos about getting to the Mun or getting to Minmus, where I go into much more detail about how to actually get into a standard circular orbit. So what I'm doing here is setting Eve as my target, and just trying to swing around and try and find... Yeah, by the way, Eve, if you're trying to do this, Eve needs to be behind Kerbin. If Kerbin is at 3 o'clock on a clock face, if you're looking down at the solar system, Eve will be between 4 and 5. I believe it's about a 60-degree angle that you need for Eve. So you can see me here playing around. I'm actually finding it quite difficult to get an encounter with Eve. I did find it quite difficult on this one, actually. I'm normally quite good, but I struggled quite badly with this. But again, I like to show this so you can see that we do struggle, but you can see there that I'm getting the grey markers. I'm just highlighting them and then playing around with the manoeuvre node to try and get that number as low as possible. And you can see that I am struggling to actually work this out. I'm not the best with manoeuvre nodes. I'm going to call that now. Sometimes people might be looking at this going, you just needed to pull prograde. I'm not great. I often mess up with these things, and it takes me a long time to sort of manoeuvre around and get where I want to go. But you can see that I'm getting very close, and eventually I do manage to get myself a little Eve orbit. Oh, sorry, intercept. But I did struggle with this. And there you go. There's my Eve intercept. So as I say, make sure Eve is roughly in the position you see on my map there. It's about, as I say, about between sort of the 5 and 6, about 60 degrees behind Kerbin. I believe Eve is the only one that is behind Kerbin. Every other planet has to be in front of Kerbin, including Moho, which is odd. I'm not sure how that works actually, but never mind. So warp around to our thrust point here, and we again just full throttle follow the manoeuvre node. And if you're in career or science mode, by this point you should have access to the full manoeuvre node aspects, hit by aiming at the manoeuvre marker rather than prograde or retrograde. You should have access to that sort of things. So there you go, you can see that I've managed to get myself a nice little Eve intercept. So I'm setting a manoeuvre node out in the middle of interplanetary space just to finesse this slightly. And pulling it down and getting it as close to Eve as possible. Now, I'm going to set in a minute Gilly as my target destination, because obviously that's where we're trying to go. We're not trying to go to Eve. And what I'm trying to do right now is get my orbit as close to Eve as possible. And I'll set Gilly as my target. And what you want to try and do, you need to treat Gilly more as an asteroid intercept rather than a planetary intercept. And what I'm going to try and do here is get my Eve periapsis as close to my ascending and or descending node. You have to highlight Eve as your target to get these to appear. And what you want to do is try and get them as close as possible. Get down to Eve, close to Eve. So sort of I try and go for like 100k, 100,000 meters, I think. But try and get the two of them to align. Now I found this pretty difficult this time. Again, I can normally do this a bit quicker, but I found it a bit difficult this time. But roughly, as you see there, you don't need to be entirely accurate, you don't need to be too accurate, but roughly this is what you want to aim for. And normally, again, I would try and get my line there more equatorial, but I struggled with it this time, and it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter too much, to be honest. So fast forward time again to your maneuver node, and we'll go from there. And as I say, you don't need to be entirely accurate. It helps, obviously, but this rocket has got plenty of fuel to make mistakes and to be inefficient. Again, like with all my videos, if it's for new players, I like to make them so that they're great hulking masses, frankly. They're way overpowered and over-engineered, and they don't need to be this big. A good rule of thumb, by the way, is if you can go to the Mun, you can go to Gilly. The Delta V requirements are roughly the same. So, but obviously this is a ship that is far bigger that you need for the Mun. But I did that purposely because you might need it. So all I'm doing here is pulling my orbit just into the capture of Eve. It doesn't need to be any more, but as soon as it comes circularized and you're captured, that's where you need it. So no further. I'll speed round forward again. And I always like going to Gilly. I find it a very interesting place. It's quite an quote-unquote easy place to get to. Compared to a lot of other places. And also you get to go to Eve, which is nice. And Eve is quite easy to get to. It's closer to Kerbin than Duna, and it has the largest gravity well in the game, bar Joule. It has an extreme amount of gravity, Eve does. So you can see here, I'm in orbit of Eve now. It's a bit dark, unfortunately, I hit it on the dark side. But you are now around Eve. If you want to set off all of your science experiments and get science from space around Eve, you can do it from high above Eve and close to Eve, and you'll get quite a lot of science for that, because we're also going to go to Gilly as well. So there you go. You want to pull it in, and now I'll fast forward round just so we can see Eve looking very pretty there in purple. So I'm just showing there that you can do a little bit of science if you want. I'm not going to bother because that's not the point of the mission, but if you want, you can do that. So I'm going to add a maneuver node now at the apoapsis there. And I'm just going to extend it outwards until the line intersects with Gilly's. It doesn't need to match, you just need those grey manoeuvre mode markers there. Now, I was quite lucky in that mine are quite pretty close together, but that's all you need. Just get the grey markers to appear, and again, that's it. Now, Gilly has the smallest gravity well of anything in the game. It has the smallest SOI, sphere of influence, sorry, of anything in the game, and it can be quite tricky to reach because of that, and because you've got Eve that gets in the way sometimes. So, what you want to do then is just try and get those. I'm trying to get them as close together as possible because I happen to get them pretty close. You don't need to do that. You might not get them as close as I got them, but it doesn't matter as long as you get the grey markers. That's the important thing. So we'll fast forward round now. I'm sorry, by the way, if anyone thinks I'm talking too quickly. I always feel like I talk too quickly in these things, and sometimes I miss little bits and bobs. If I do, I apologise. I'm trying to do this as best I can. I'm obviously quite new to doing videos, and yeah, so any advice if you think I'm going too quick, that's fine. But we'll warp round now and extend our orbit outwards to our manoeuvre there. I'm just slowing down just to try and get this perfect. There we go. What you want to do here, once you've got this orbit, is set a manoeuvre node right there on your on the intersect line, and just pull retrograde. That's all you need to do. Pull retrograde and watch the manoeuvre nodes come close together like that. So sometimes they can go a bit funny and they can sort of spin round like mine are doing here, but eventually you will see that they match up and you get yourself a Gilly encounter. Lovely view of Eve there blocking the sun. Right, so again, I will warp round now to this. I'm focusing my view on Gilly just to see whereabouts I'm going to end up. It really doesn't matter on Gilly too much. As long as you get within its sphere of influence, that's literally all you need. Gilly has such a small gravity well and sphere of influence and pull that you don't need much at all, honestly. So we'll warp around now. You can see how close I'm getting actually to Gilly anyway. As soon as we get to our target, we'll fire. So yeah, again, as I've been saying, I quite like Gilly as a place to go because you don't need that much Delta V. It's a fairly easy place in that sense. You can get there quite early on if you want. You can do quite low tech ones. Actually, Matt Lown has a great. This is how I learned this to do this. Is a low tech to Gilly, and he uses a very low tech mission, and that's a good sort of reference point for if you can get to the Mun, you can get to Gilly, as I mentioned earlier. But I just quite like Gilly as a place to go. I find it quite interesting because it is an asteroid. I say you need to treat it as an asteroid intercept. It is an asteroid. Like, that's exactly what it is. It's a captured asteroid in Eve's orbit. Unlike reality, of course, where Venus, Eve's analog, just doesn't have any sort of natural satellite. So you can see here, I'm in the sphere of influence, and like you do with anything, you pull retrograde, and you can see as soon as you come in, that's how. So like you can very quickly just get captured in its sphere of influence, and your orbital line disappears. Small changes on Eve cause dramatic changes. Small effects of thrust. Right, okay, so anyway, we're just waiting to get to our manoeuvre node point now, and it's a fairly simple burn, just retrograde, kill off all our speed, and try and get captured in an Eve orbit. And you can see Eve is a very odd shape, so we'll disregard our endpoint there. So that's how much fuel this has got. The lander can last all the way up until you get to Eve, and you really don't need that much fuel while you're at Eve. As I say, small thrust changes will cause quite dramatic changes in the general shape of your orbit. You can see how quickly there that the orbit gets pulled in. So I'd like to get ourselves a little close there, and once again, you see there, trying to get this manoeuvre node to work. I think I just gave up in the end, warped round. Yeah, I just warped round and went retrograde. You don't need a manoeuvre node for this. You can also see there's one thing about Gilly actually, is that it orbits on its own axis quite quickly. Spins on its own axis quite quickly. So you can see that when you're trying to land, Gilly itself, sorry, I think I just called it Eve. Gilly itself has quite a lot of spin on it already. So I'm just trying to choose a landing site here. Obviously, you're trying to go for somewhere on the light side of the asteroid or the moon, or if you want to call it Gilly. That, just so obviously you can see it. Kerbal is an incredibly dark game when you're in the dark. So, unlike a lot of games like Red Dead Redemption 2, where it just basically puts a blue filter over everything. Although I do love that game, side note. So there you go, I've chosen my landing spot, and I will now... Oh, apparently I wasn't happy with that. So, yeah, I'm just trying to... Oh, I think I tried to decide to land on the Highlands section that you can see here. And I'll warp around now, just to try and get there. The problem is with Gilly, you can't... I mean, you can see that my orbital speed is 17, 18 now meters a second. It's so slow. Obviously, you can do all your science now as well. I'll just do an example of that you can do in space high above Gilly, space low above Gilly, and then obviously landed at Gilly and all of Gilly's biomes. I believe Gilly does have different biomes. Actually, I might... No, it does have different biomes. Yeah, of course it does. I don't know why I'm questioning myself on that. But yeah, I've left this footage in. I could have easily cut this out, but I have left it in just to show you how frustratingly slow you can be around Gilly occasionally. I mean, I'm lowering my landing legs, but I'm still quite a distance off actually being able to land this, because it can be very slow. But I find Gilly quite an interesting shape, and because you have to do sort of an asteroid capture concept to get to it, I find it quite an interesting place to get to. You have to use different techniques than you would to get to, say, other interplanetary moons like Ike. I also found going to Jool quite interesting, because you often use gravity captures and whatnot, just to make sure to save on fuel, because it can be quite difficult to get to Jool with, well, taking enormous ships. So most people use Tylo as a gravity capture. Obviously, I will do some videos on going to Jool, but this is sort of a series where I'll be following along, doing some for Gilly. I'll probably do maybe like a mixed Duna Ike mission, maybe take maybe I'll do that next, land a rover on Duna, and then take my manned capsule and land that on Ike, and I'll do both at the same time with the same vessel. That could be quite fun. Otherwise, Dres would normally be my next target. Yes, Dres doesn't exist, as the community likes to say. But I like Dres personally. It's got a huge canyon on it, which I enjoy flying space planes through. But yeah, Dres is alright. It's kind of dull. I don't really like it in that much. But after that, where would I go after Dres? Moho, maybe? Elu? I find them interesting places. They're difficult for different reasons, though. Elu is very far out. You need quite a lot of fuel to get there. Moho's the other way round. You can get there fairly easily, but you need an enormous amount of delta V to stop. Anyway, I'm going way off on a tangent here. I'm so sorry, I'm going hugely off on a tangent. Nothing is happening on screen. This is just me fast forwarding, and I didn't want to speed the footage up too much. But you can see here, I try and land. Now, I make a slight rookie error here. You can see on my nav ball, I'm still trying to kill off my orbital speed, when I should be trying to kill off my surface speed. So even when I speed this up and get it to 0, I'm still moving. Now at this point, I'm getting quite confused, and I can't work out why I'm still moving. You can see it. I'm looking at retrograde. I'm looking at program, thinking, why am I still moving? But yeah, so that's all you want to do. On your nav ball, if it hasn't done it automatically, which on Gilly it often doesn't, you just need to click where it says orbit and on your speed, and it will change it to surface. And that way you're looking at your speed relative to the surface of the planet rather than relative to its orbit. Which you can see, this is a great example of why you need to do that, because you can be on 0, our orbits are perfectly aligned, but not on the surface. So you see here, I'm just sort of free flying now, trying to kill off my speed. Sort of just I'm looking at it thinking, hang on, why am I now gaining height as well? So yeah, I got quite confused by this, and honestly, this has taken, I'm realising now, this has taken me an embarrassingly long time to work out what is actually wrong. I'm even speeding up time warping. Yeah, this has taken me an embarrassingly long time to work out what's wrong. But again, like my earlier issue, I like to leave this stuff in because, you know, there we go, I've worked it out. Everyone makes mistakes. We all make mistakes, we all forget little things. This game can be quite complicated, particularly when you're doing interplanetary missions. There's a lot you need to think about. Yeah, so you can see here now I'm just trying to push myself towards the planet and land inside a rock. Now, these sort of scatter terrain features are hollow. They are just that. They're visual features. But I've killed off all my speed here. You can see the problem with Gilly, actually, is you'll often bounce. Like, it has such low gravity. You can actually get a Kerbal using just their jetpacks into orbit, into a full circularized orbit, just with their jetpacks. It's so low. So, here I am, on the surface of Gilly. Look at us. Look how happy Jeb is. So we'll do our little science experiments. Obviously you can do all the ones you've got on your ship as well. But more importantly, plant our flag. Which is what we need to do every time we go to a new planet. / moon / asteroid caught in orbit. So yeah, pretty happy there. We've managed to get to Gilly. And Jeb's got his visor down. That's obviously very important. Apparently I jumped and Jeb wanted to do a somersault because why not? But here you'll see one of the other problems with Gilly. If you run out of fuel, I haven't obviously, but if you've run out of fuel, that's what one jump does. That's how high it can send you. And I'm not slowing down either. So anyway, I just put my RCS on and obviously counteracted that. Now, I was looking for features on Gilly. I believe there's, like the other planets, like a Duna Stone or a Mun Stone. There are things you can bring back from Gilly. Now, I did find this. This is a Gilly ridgeline, which is sort of like the craters on the moon. On the Mun, sorry, not the moon. What's the moon? I've never heard of the moon. Yeah, kind of like the craters on the Mun. It's a feature for the scanning arms of rovers. But there are other features that, like I say, like the Munstone, Dunastone equivalents on Gilly, but I couldn't find one, unfortunately. I did try and look around. You see me looking here. But yeah, so the ridge line, though, is quite interesting because getting rovers to Gilly, I mean, as easy as landing that, but getting a rover to drive on Gilly, that's a different matter. The gravity is so low. Even just a small burst of speed can easily send the front end up and flying, and you will go hundreds of meters into the air. I mean, you can see me playing around here, and I'm using so little thrust just to move. But, you know, this is Gilly. I like Gilly. I find it quite an interesting place, personally. Getting rovers here, getting rovers to work here, I quite like rovers. You'll see that in future episodes that I'm planning to make, but I love rovers. I love landing rovers on every moon planet that I can. I think there's only a few, sort of Bop and Val, Elu, I think, that I've never managed to land rovers on. And Elu was for want of trying. I just never bothered with Elu. I'm not sure why. But I don't think I've ever landed a rover there. But yeah, getting one to work was quite difficult and quite challenging. I'll maybe make a video about that at one point. But you can see here my camera angle switches because suddenly the game has decided Mr. Jebediah here is in orbit now, as opposed to just flying around. Yeah, Gilly I think is only 13 kilometers on its diameter. But that's how small it is. It's tiny. And Eve, for example, is 600, I believe. Something around that figure. But yeah, it's tiny. It's absolutely tiny. I got a little lost here and actually had to set that as my mark on the map, even though I was very clearly, literally right next to it. So, yeah. But, I've played this footage back at normal speed, by the way, just because I like to do that on the landings. Even though I didn't really do anything, I was just having to play around, flying around, trying to look for interesting stuff. Didn't find anything. Decided, you know what, I'm bored now. Let's go home. But there we go. Landing on the side of my ship. And we will board. Okay, now let's start our process of going home, shall we? Okay, so actually what I'll first do here is do all the science I forgot to do when I landed, which was kind of silly of me, but never mind. So yeah, and like with all the other craft that I've made, only the command pod will be coming home with us. So what you're going to need to do is jump out and collect all of that science. You might have been better to bring a scientist along for this mission if you wanted to actually repeat some of the experiments like the Science Junior Unit and the Mystery Goo and be able to reset them. As long as they have a radar dish and they're capable of connecting to the Kerbal Space Center, they can make maneuver nodes and all that jazz. So they can still do that. And you just need to make sure you come out, actually exit the module and physically collect it by right-clicking. So we'll launch up, and Gilly's so small you can almost immediately point 90 degrees. You see there, I'm already out of Gilly's orbit. That's all it took. That isn't even just a sort of, let's get to our apoapsis. I'm gone. So I could have just done that as well, but I decided to actually show you how to do it effectively, basically. So you can see there, I've gone for a more standard, just got an apoapsis, a nice height above Gilly. But you can see I'm so low that I can't warp. And you get the opposite effect of when you were trying to land, that it takes ages just to warp away. Now I'm speeding the footage up here to 300%. And you can still see how long this is taking. This is 300%, this is 4 times. Is that 4 times? 200% would be... Yeah, 100% would be twice as much, wouldn't it? So yeah, this is 4 times the speed that you'd have. And you can see how long it's still taken even then. It's taken us a good 45 seconds to a minute. So I'm just going to give it a little save here as well, just in case I mess up. And I'll let you in on a little lie. I did. See, there was a nice little hard cut there that I managed to hide roughly, but I'm going to call it out. I messed up several times. So I had to reload and come back in. And then from here, I will now get home in one go. But yeah, I messed up quite a lot trying to get home, actually. So, okay, what I did there while I was talking was just circularise my orbit around Eve. I've left Gilly, gone into a nice little circular orbit of Eve. You just need to prograde from Gilly. That's all you need to do. And what I'm doing here again is just enormously fast forwarding the footage because I was in the wrong place. So Eve was in the wrong transfer window for Kerbin. Now, if you had enough fuel in a lot of ships, you can just brute force it. But mine, unfortunately, didn't have that. So I'm just spinning myself around here to get myself into a nice transfer window. Now, the transfer window you're looking at is for, if Kerbin was, again, on a clock face, 3 o'clock, then Eve is going to be roughly between 5 and 6. Closer to 6 than 5. You can see here, it's about a 72-degree angle, I believe. And what I'll do is prograde, so I'm pulling my orbit right down to Eve. It looks like I'm going backwards, but this is the O-berth effect, which is the closer you are to a planet's surface, the faster you'll be travelling. So you want to pull it all the way down, and then you can use that to basically slingshot yourself around. And now, from there, from the periapsis, I'm now using a maneuver node just to move around, and I'm getting those grey little intercept markers. So I'll play with the maneuver node here, just to try and get those as close as possible. You can see I'm pulling on all of them, radial in, radial out, anti-normal, normal, prograde, retrograde, just to get them. You play with all of them, and one of them will reduce it significantly. If none of them do, try moving the maneuver node itself, left or right. But eventually you will. If you're in the correct transfer window, you can see here I'm moving mine to the right now. But if you're in the right transfer window, you will be able to get an intercept. And again, like with any interplanetary travel, all you need is the intercept. Once you've got the intercept, once you're out into deep interplanetary space, you can work it from there and finesse it because you're not near a planet. You don't have to worry about gravity or anything getting in the way. It's fine. So yeah, you can see here I'm just getting fairly close now. Again, like with a lot of this mission, I struggled quite hard to get this. I don't know why. That's why I had to reload several times. That's what I messed up on, was wasting fuel in the pursuit of trying to brute force it and not getting it. That's why I actually didn't plan this mission to have to speed up my orbit like that. I thought I could brute force it, but it turns out I couldn't. So I'm getting extremely close here. And there we go. Nope, not quite yet. So this is, you can see how difficult it actually is, though, to really try and finesse this and get it right when you're not quite in the right place. So I think I probably could have done with being another couple of degrees over on my orbit when I was fast forwarding all of the orbits. But it doesn't matter. There is enough fuel in this craft. We are going to be doing my standard the aerobrake maneuver. So we will not be circularizing our orbit at Kerbin. We will be slamming into the atmosphere. And that's my plan on most things, because ablators or heat shields in this game are way overpowered. They are so OP. They can take so much damage and survive. So it's to save on fuel and just having enormous craft and having to worry about that extra step. I mean, you can do it, and it's quite fun to do that. But for me, for the goal of what I'm trying to achieve here, of making minimalist, simple ships. Yeah, anyway, sorry, I've gone on tangent there. I've missed there that we actually did manage to get our encounter. So I'm just fast-forwarding round. And then, I mean, this is quite a big burn as well. So we'll just fast-forward round, though, and then hit our maneuver node and full thrust. So it's a fairly, it's fairly simple once you've actually got the maneuver in there. And that's the thing, that if you're struggling with all of this, just play around. Make sure you have a quick save before you try anything, and just play around with the maneuver node. Even just in orbit of Kerbin, see what you can achieve with it. I always struggled with the maneuver node to begin with, but yeah, once you do that, it's not too bad. So there you go. I didn't quite manage to get my intercept with Kerbin, but what I've decided to do is I will play with that, as I mentioned, while I'm out into deep interplanetary space. So I've set my maneuver node there, actually on the... yeah, there we go. I'm using anti-normal and normal to try and get my alignment the same, just to close that gap. And there you can see I've managed to get my intercept. So I'm focusing my view on Kerbin. And then I will use my maneuver node maker to just pull my orbit, as I mentioned before, all the way down inside Kerbin's atmosphere. I normally go for between 25 and 30 kilometers. It's enough to slow you down without completely destroying your ship. I mean, you could go lower, it doesn't matter. I just like it, that's what I like to do. So we'll fast forward now to that point. It's not a particularly big burn, this. We haven't got an enormous amount of fuel left, if I'm honest. But there's enough. There's enough to do this, and enough to make a few mistakes here and there as well. I mean, this was not the cleanest of goes anyway. My Ascent wasn't great, and there were a couple of other mistakes I made along the way, but you can see it's doable. There we go. I just move it slightly back out, and then warp round to Kerbin, and we're home. We're homeward bound. Let's just appreciate the beauty of Kerbin's solar system then, because there's not much left to do. We've not got much fuel left. We can enjoy the sun there. And that's it. We're going to be hitting Kerbin's atmosphere. We will obviously release our last decoupler and activate our parachutes. And return home from our first ever expedition to the Purple Planet. One day, you'll land on it. Just as a thing about Eve as well, in case you're unaware, Eve is often considered sort of the end game boss for Kerbal space program. It's extremely difficult to get to. Its atmosphere is incredibly thick, so landing is difficult. And even if you land, it's got the biggest gravity in the game, as I mentioned earlier, except Joule, which means it's incredibly difficult to take off. And because the atmosphere is so thick, you have to be aerodynamic. There is no option about it. So I will do a video on that again, but that'll be much later in this series. But here we are. Parachutes activated, all of that lovely jubbly science. And we can safely return Jeb home. He is the most heroic of all of our Kerbals, going alone off into the deep dark of space. He knows he's safe though. Smiles at everything. Look how happy he is. I mean, he's not even happy to be home. He wants to be back out there. He's ready to go again. Unfortunately, his legs will be weak. He's got vomit on his sweater already. Wait. So let's sorry. Let's return to the space then. That was a weird reference. So yeah, that's the end of this video then. If you've been able to follow along and it's helped you get to Gilly, that's brilliant. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate any support that can be given. Like if you enjoyed it. Any comments that can give me suggestions on how to do better videos, that'd be fantastic. So we'll give that a quick save there. And that's it. You've got so much science from Gilly. And as I say, in my next mission maybe I'll do a Duna Ike. I'm not sure, but we'll see. But I hope that was able to help. Subscribe if you really enjoyed it. I would appreciate that very much. It's a new channel. But until then, thank you very much for watching and stay safe.